Anxiety is part of life. We all experience it from the moment we are born. But how do you know when anxiety is something more serious? How do you know when you have an anxiety disorder? In this video, I'm going to talk about why it's important to recognize the signs of an anxiety disorder and the difference between normal anxiety and an anxiety disorder. I'll talk about the most common anxiety disorders and tell you what you need to do if you suspect you have one. I'm also going to talk about some of the more unusual subtypes of the main anxiety disorders, and I'll also touch on phobias. So let's get started. Why is it important to recognize the signs of an anxiety disorder? Although some anxiety disorders can develop later in life after a period of stress or trauma, for the majority they develop quite early in life. This meta-analysis of 24 studies on anxiety disorders found the average age of onset for separation anxiety disorder, specific phobia, and social phobia was under 15 years old, whereas the average age for the onset of agoraphobia, OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, panic disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder was between 21 and 34 years. And the problem is, if anxiety disorders are not diagnosed and treated, they usually get worse with time and can severely impact the quality of life. And the longer it takes to treat an anxiety disorder, the harder the recovery is. And if you don't realize you have an anxiety disorder, you are unlikely to seek treatment. So what's the difference between normal anxiety and an anxiety disorder? Anxiety disorders are most frequently diagnosed using the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. This manual details the criteria for each anxiety disorder. I will not go into the detail for each anxiety disorders, that will take too long. And I have other videos on many different anxiety disorders, which explains the criteria for each one. I will link them at the end. But there are 5 good indicators that have to be present for a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder. Let me explain. The first is intensity. The fear or anxiety you experience will be intense. We're not talking about being a bit worried, nervous, or apprehensive. We're talking about a level of anxiety that dominates your thoughts, often causing physical symptoms like an upset stomach or sleep problems. In the case of panic disorder and sometimes social anxiety, can actually cause full-blown panic attacks. Second, the fear or anxiety will be irrational. For example, if you've been told you've got 6 months to live, intense anxiety is rational. But if you get an intense anxiety about the thought of getting ill and dying when you were perfectly healthy, that is irrational. Equally, if you were worrying excessively about things that might never happen, or things that other people just don't seem to worry about, then it may be an anxiety disorder. The third indicator is frequency. The anxious thoughts and feelings happen frequently. It's not just a one-off event that causes your anxiety. With some anxiety disorders, like social anxiety, it can be linked to a specific situation, such as social interaction. But again, it will be frequent, so you will feel the anxiety in many social situations, not just a one-off like a wedding speech. The fourth indicator is time frame. We all go through times in our life when we feel a bit anxious. For example, leading up to exams, making a speech, or trying to hit a difficult deadline in work. But with anxiety disorders, the anxiety is not for a limited time. You will have probably noticed that you've been experiencing the anxiety for a long time. The criteria for generalized anxiety disorder defines a period of greater than 6 months. And although a specific period isn't mentioned for other anxiety disorders, 6 months is probably as good an indicator as any. By the time most people realize they have an anxiety disorder, they have probably been experiencing intense anxiety for years. And the fifth indicator is changes in your behavior. In social anxiety and panic disorder, the most common behavior is avoidance. Whereas in OCD, the behaviors can be very varied, but will be aimed at neutralizing the anxiety brought by an intrusive thought or image, but may also involve avoidance or check-in. In GAD and health anxiety, the behaviors are usually types of reassurance seeking. Whatever the behavior, you will be aware that most other people do not do it, and will probably be aware that it's irrational. The most common anxiety disorders are panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, PTSD, and separation anxiety. But I also want to mention phobias. Phobias are usually very specific and often have a less impact on the quality of life because they can be avoided. For example, if you have a phobia of jellyfish, you will probably only experience anxiety if you go to the beach. But some phobias are hard to avoid, And some are arguably not phobias but subtypes of anxiety disorders. For example, deipnophobia is a fear of eating in front of others and is considered a subtype of social anxiety. Paruresis and parcopresis, which are fears of going to the toilet in the vicinity of others, could also be considered a subtype of social anxiety, while coprophobia, a fear of pooping, could be considered a phobia or may be linked to OCD. Whether your anxiety is an anxiety disorder, a subtype of an anxiety disorder, or a phobia, it doesn't really matter. If it's impacting your quality of life, it needs treating. The first point of contact is usually your doctor, but try to get referred for therapy as soon as possible because doctors are not specialists in anxiety disorders. And often they will just offer medication, which, although it can help, often has side effects and can be difficult to discontinue later. While therapies like CBT can make a big difference, especially if you start treatment in the early stages of the anxiety disorder. As promised, now I will give you some links to more detailed videos on each anxiety disorder. If you would like to learn more about the criteria for OCD, then click this link, which explains the difference between OCD and just having OCD traits. If you think you might have panic disorder, then watch this series of videos that not only tells you the symptoms, but also how to overcome it. To learn more about the difference between just worry and generalized anxiety disorder, click this link. For social anxiety, I have a series which explains the symptoms, types, and how it's treated, which again is linked above. I hope this video has helped you. If it has, please give me a like and subscribe as I release a new video every week. Take care now.